All right, we'd like to welcome you to the walkthrough, the Aiken Standard's weekly football preview show that we're going to have each Wednesday this year. And going into this season, there's a lot of exciting things happening, so we want to be here to give you all the knowledge you need, and we'll go over a little bit of some of the things that happened in previous weeks, like game balls and players of the week and such. And for starters, we're going to start out with the high school media football poll that came out yesterday and talk about some of the area teams that were included in there. And we can start at 4A with some of the area schools receiving votes and South Aiken actually getting in the poll.
Yeah, I mean, the area is always well represented in these polls, I feel like. I think we have 7 teams that are included across all the classifications. We start with South Aiken there at the number 9 spot. I think that the voters really weighed pretty heavily what South Aiken lost. Kind of goes back to what I talked to Jesse Sanders about there being some doubters, about people maybe on the outside saying, how good is this South Aiken team actually going to be? Of course, they will find a way to use that as fuel throughout the season. And you go down into the receiving votes category, and North Augusta leading the way there. They're also really in a transitional period. Actually, between the two schools, we're looking at 53 graduated seniors from those two programs, combined, and lots to replace. They're going to be banking heavily on a strong linebacking core to lead that defense. Interestingly enough, you also have Brooklyn Casey in there. That's going to be, the newcomer to that new Region 5 4A with our Aiken County Schools and Airport.
Yeah, and it should come as no surprise there that you see South Point is number 1.
There is a surprise here, though, and it's that they're not unanimous.
Well, yes.
I know that South Point lost a lot, but I still think that if there are 15 votes available, that South Point needs all 15. Seeing Hartsville with 3 was a big surprise for me.
Yeah, I guess some of the voters felt like South Point may have lost a little too much there. But you also have some schools like Greer who have put on a strong showing last season and knocked out South Aiken, obviously. South Aiken.
Lots coming back, too.
Yeah. And super talented there. And as you'll also see on the screen, we have the 3A listed there. Now, this really is no surprise.
There you go.
Right, with all 15 of the votes. And but we also have Strom Thurmond coming in at number 6 there, the only Area 3A school in the top 10, it seems, every year when it starts and most of the time when it finishes.
Yeah, and we can always count on Strom Thurmond to make that appearance, and it's always interesting to me how they're able to maintain that spot even when they play such a challenging non-region schedule. And they will definitely see a test there within region with still in there with Gilbert, and it's one of the top-ranked teams in the state. They're in there at number 3. Brooklyn Casey, we just mentioned, going to 5-4. No longer a region opponent of Strom Thurmond's. They play a tough schedule like always. We'll see them playing big games. Right from the start all the way through. So if we see them in there at the end of the season, they've certainly earned it.
Yeah, and even before they get into region play, they'll have a big one against Emerald and be going up against them. So you'll kind of get a gauge of where they stand from that, with Emerald being number 2 in the preseason.
It's not an easy schedule. It never is over there.
Of course. That's the way Hillary and them like it. Moving on down to 2A, this may be where we have the best team in our area. And they come in at number 2, right behind defending state champion Abbeville, who got all 15 first-place votes. But Barnwell in there at number 2. Dwayne Garrick and the crew are back this year, eager to get to the state championship game, and a lot of the media around the state seem to like their chances.
Hartsville can get three votes from South Point, but Barnwell can't even get 1 from Abbeville. Kind of a tough crowd that they're playing to there, but number 2 and well deserved. They bring back so much, and Dwayne Garrick, I think, he kind of commands that respect in the polls, just with how he's been able to do that with multiple programs, how he's able to do that with multiple offensive schemes, how he's so versatile, how he can just make it work wherever he is, whatever he has on his roster. So looking at Barnwell there at number 2, I mean, I think that's exactly where they need to be right now.
Gotcha. And as you also see up on the screen right now, the Class A poll up there, Ridge Spring Minetta coming in pretty high at number 3 right there, the area's top-ranked team in the Class A poll. And they're ahead of both Williston, who's only 1 spot behind, and Wagner a little bit further down.
Yeah, this is the one that I think is quite interesting. Just that I think that if you ask any of those coaches in that region, or even the 1A coaches throughout the state, they will all say that that region is Williston Elko's to lose. So it is interesting to me to see them ranked behind Ridge Spring Minetta. That could be, by a single point once all those votes are tallied up. But I mean, 2 just quality programs that will give Lamar a run for its money there in the upper state, and Wagner Sally will do the same thing. I think Wagner Sally is vastly underrated at number 8. I almost feel like you could take Williston Elko, Wagner Sally, Ridge Spring Minetta in whatever order you want to do the 3 and just put them right there together. These programs are all so good that I think they all deserve that top billing.
All right, we're going to get into the action that will be taking place on the field on Friday night, and we're going to start off with the game of the week with South Aiken hosting Greenwood. It'll be broadcast on aikenstandard.com and on the Aiken Standard YouTube page. And in that one, it's obviously a big matchup and some interesting storylines with Dan Pippen coming back to one of his old schools and coaching down here again.
It always starts, I think, with Dan Pippen when we get Greenwood in town. Obviously, we saw Greenwood come here last year to face Aiken and Midland Valley. You guys had Midland Valley on a TV game, and it's good to have him back. He was really a staple of the area high school football scene for all those years at South Aiken, and then when he went to North Augusta. So for him to have this chance to come back, play in his old ball yard, and this is a tall task for them. This isn't coming back to play, a nothing opponent. This is a big game for Greenwood.
Yeah, and obviously they've lost a lot of talent up there. They have a senior quarterback, however, and they're going into the season looking to kind of get to a level that fans have expected at Greenwood. And but with South Aiken, they've also lost a lot, but they're kind of on the come up on that side of things, and obviously are looking to break in some new people and compete at this level.
Right, and you mentioned first of all about what Greenwood lost. They're actually in a position in terms of what they lost that North Augusta is in terms of losing, your star quarterback, your star wide receiver, and your star running back all in one senior class. That's a lot of production to replace, no matter who you are. So that is certainly going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. A senior quarterback there at Greenwood in Rhett Lindler, but still more or less a new face. So we will see how things go there, especially with on the South Aiken defense, the strength being on the defensive line. These are the guys who. They were the youngsters a couple years ago. They didn't have to be the leaders because they had those strong leaders at linebacker, at defensive back behind them. It's their turn now. And they're the guys who could really, really disrupt things for this Greenwood offense and make life awfully difficult.
Gotcha. And moving on to another big game in the area, if South Aiken Greenwood weren't the game of the week, I believe this would be. It's a huge matchup in the area with North Augusta facing Thompson, 2 big fan bases. It should be a great atmosphere out there.
Yeah, this is, 4A power versus 4A power in terms of, just on opposite sides of the river. Lots of things in common with these programs in terms of state championships. Thompson has 5, most recently in 2002. North Augusta has 3, most recently in 1989. Both coming off of 10-win seasons that didn't really go the way they wanted to in the postseason. Loud and proud fan bases that travel well. It's going to be a packed house at the Jackets Nest. I suggest leaving early Friday to get one of those parking spots and to be able to get into the stadium on time. This is a big game, and we're going to learn a lot about North Augusta in this game, just because there are those question marks at some big-time positions. Now, Brian Thomas has options. He's got quarterbacks. He's got running backs. He's got all of that. It's just getting them into the game, seeing who does what. Like he told me, maybe they don't know who's going to take the first snap at all those positions. Maybe over the first handful of snaps, you can see different guys for each one of those. That's sort of a luxury in a way. They are, for the most part, untested, but he has options. We know that they're talented guys, so there's going to be a lot to learn on the other side of the ball, because that's primarily offensive. Yeah. Defensive line, maybe. He said things maybe will look a little bit different, but it's North Augusta. They'll fill whatever holes they have to. It'll all come down, I think, to what those linebackers can lead them to do defensively. That's the strength. That's where your key returners are, and those are the guys that we'll look for to make some really big plays Friday night.
Yeah, you'll probably see them all flying all over the field. And I have a feeling that Coach Thomas knows who he's
I think he knows.
There the first couple snaps.
I think he knows, and I think that he is very much aware that whatever he told me was going in print. So it only made sense to keep the mystery alive,
of course,
a little bit more. But we also, one more note with that Thompson team, they have a transfer that came in from Evans, the quarterback Demetrius Taylor, who North Augusta saw last year. That win that North Augusta had very early in the season, DeJuan Bell making a couple of big interceptions late in that game. 3 rushing touchdowns from the quarterback position. He was a guy who had somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,900 total yards and 44 touchdowns a year ago at Evans. He's certainly a guy to watch for. I guarantee those linebackers, the defensive coaches, those other defensive players, they have not forgotten about him.
I'm sure they have not. Moving right along there, now Midland Valley opens the season against a team from Georgia as well with Lakeside. They're traveling over there. And Coach Jenkins and the Mustangs are really looking to get out and get some early wins. And as he said to me earlier today, the only stat that's going to matter is whether or not they win the game. It's
the only one that matters anyway.
Well, yeah.
What we'll look for there is there's a lot, I think, to be excited about on the offensive side of the ball there. They showed some flashes of it in the Aiken County scrimmage. I think that Harper Puckett to Brian Staley Jr. combination can really pay off for them this year. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, just with Lakeside, not a familiar opponent. So there will be maybe some feeling out going on in that game, because they're not opening with, sort of like the same rotation of teams that they always do. So there will be maybe a little bit of mystery. There's always some of that anyway in week 0 or week 1, if you want to call it that. So we'll see kind of how they settle in, and how they're able to produce against a Lakeside team that they've got some players.
Yeah, one of Jenkins' real concerns is he just wants the offensive line to perform well enough to give Puckett time and to open up some lanes for DeAndre Pearson. He said as long as they do that, they should be fine. He's going to need some receivers to step up to make some plays. He said he's expecting that. But he's also kind of relying, much like some of the other schools we've talked about, relying on that defensive line. He says it's one of the best he's had since he's been here, and Desmond Curry and those guys really get after, and they're going to have to contain Lakeside's kind of like North Augusta. Jenkins said they're kind of preparing 2 game plans because they don't know who's playing quarterback. All they have is scrimmage footage.
That could be dangerous.
Everyone's been out there, but yeah, it's a different beast to prepare 2 different game plans and then have to potentially change them on the fly. But they're pretty confident going into the week and are expecting good things for this season. But moving down to the 3A level, and we spoke about them a little earlier, being ranked in the polls. Strom-Thurmond opens with a big rivalry, if you will, against Saluda. They're traveling over to Saluda. Should be a big game, and we'll learn a lot about Strom-Thurmond in this one with Jaquan Harris coming back and being in that role one more year, smarter, stronger. Coach Hillary really praised all kinds of things about him, so he's really looking forward to what they can do, and this could be the start of that.
Yeah, and certainly I think they're gearing up for him to be more impactful in the run game. You go back to the Greenwood Jamboree, and Thurmond playing Greenwood in that one, and Jaquan Harris, right at the beginning of that goes 70, 75 yards for a touchdown. That's obviously an encouraging thing for that offensive game plan. It's an interesting rivalry game that they have, that the Rebels have with Saluda. We talk about it every time it comes up. Is it being a big game? With it being this early in the season, there's no trickery that Saluda can play with the tapes. So it'll all come down to just what we all saw over the summer.
Yeah, maybe the Rebels will actually have some surprises for them this year. Huh?
Yeah, repay the favor from a few years ago.
But moving on down to can't really say a classification because
it's a slash right here.
1A against the 2A, kind of a rivalry, Barnwell County rivalry. Barnwell versus Williston Elko. Two programs know each other, two coaches know each other, so it's nothing unknown here.
Nothing at all. We both talked with their coaches today. Derek Youngblood over at Williston Elko told me, this is just a good, clean, fun rivalry. There's no ill will between these programs, between these players. These are kids that grew up playing rec ball together. These are guys that in many cases these guys hang out on the weekends. These guys are friends, and they're members of two elite football programs in the state of South Carolina. Now, you said no unknowns here. That is true, but it did make me think of something that Derek Youngblood said about his relationship with Dwayne Garrick. Garrick, obviously, teaching Youngblood so much of what he knows during their time together at Williston Elko. Coach Youngblood told me today that he doesn't know anything that Garrick doesn't know, but Garrick knows everything that Youngblood knows. So whether there's any type of trickery, any type of differing game plans, I don't think we'll see that. Though Barnwell may do things a little differently offensively than in their past.
Well, yeah, and that's a byproduct of kind of the way they switch things up
it's personnel.
this year. And personnel. They're going more to single back offense. And so I think this will be the first chance for fans to really see how that's going to work. And I think from what Garrick and everyone around the program has been saying, everyone will be in for a surprise, but it shouldn't really be a surprise because the Barnwell offense has been rolling like a well-oiled machine for several years now since Garrett got back. So
it's what he does when he gets his hands on a program.
Of course. And now we're getting down into another slash matchup, I guess, if you will.
Another slash rivalry game.
Another one of our Class 8 teams, Ridge Spring Monetta, which comes into the season with high hopes, and they always start out with a tough schedule, and maybe they're looking to surprise some people here with an upset.
Yeah, in years past when we've talked about this, Ridge Spring Monetta always opening with those traditional rivals, Batesburg, Leesville, who they play Friday, and Saluda. A lot of times it's get through those two games without getting anybody hurt.
Yeah.
And play your next tune-up before region play, and then that's when you hit your stride. This year, though, they may be thinking about, maybe surprising some people. Going up to Batesburg is, you don't ever look at that as an easy game. But this is a confident group. This is a group that's coming off of another Upper State Championship game appearance, and that was a game that left them hungry. This is something they talk about a lot, about getting over that hump, getting to a state championship game. That's if they carry themselves with that kind of confidence throughout. I mean, they could create bigger problems for these 2A schools than what they're ready for.
So I know it's not Friday, but are you saying this is going to be your upset pick of the week?
You know, I am not going to make any picks on a midweek show, especially when I know how some coaches and how some programs like to keep things under wraps until the final minutes. So I will go last minute like I always do.
Yeah, I probably will as well, but I'm going to go ahead and say Richmond is going to win. So I can have bragging rights over that if that gets me any bonus points.
You can have that. I mean, those don't count for any extra points in our weekly picks, but you know you can certainly have the moral victory as well.
At least the people will see it before the picks. But moving right along to Wagner Sally taking on Pillion in a matchup of a 1A school going up against a 3A school. But Wagner Sally feels they're evenly matched, as we've seen last year and several other years with them playing Pillion. Going into this one, they have a lot coming back as well, and it'll be another one of those things where we'll see if what it's going to look like out there this season for all those returners on both the offense and defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, all those youngsters from the last 2 years of 8-win seasons, all those guys are juniors and seniors now.
Yeah.
This is a team that beat up on Pillion last year, a Pillion team that was perhaps supposed to run all over them. The defense there at Wagner Sally made sure that no such thing happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's how they're going to play football. That defense kept Silver Bluff off the scoreboard at the scrimmage until the final second of their 24 minutes of action. And, you know, Willie Fox said, I mean, that's what we do. That's what we're known for. I mean, they play that kind of defense. They, you know, really just take teams out of the game with their offense when they're going ball control. I mean, by the time you get a chance to really rest, you know, 9 minutes are off the clock and they've got the lead. This is a game, so they start with Pillion. Last year, this was Whitmire that Wagner Sally was playing. They've done away with those 1A games in their non-region schedule. They really want to beef this schedule up because, I mean, they're thinking championship this year.
Yeah, that's all they talked about when they came by earlier this year to talk about the season, and they really feel like they have a great opportunity to accomplish that. And it starts here with getting tuned up in the non-conference schedule because you only have a couple of games in that region.
In that region, right, with that being such a big region and having so many region games, yeah, you don't have as many opportunities. And we've learned from Willis-Sonelka over the last decade, you're not winning that region if you don't go undefeated.
Pretty much.
So you get these tune-ups because, you know, week 3 rolls around, you're playing region games.
Yeah. And we did not forget about our friends across the street, Aiken and Chester. They have a big matchup opening the season at Aiken. The game was originally scheduled to be played at Newberry. I'm not sure what happened there, but
it saves us on mileage, though.
Yes, we don't have to travel that far to cover it now. But they'll take on Chester, and they're also looking to turn things around, and they want to start off early, and they feel like going up against this team will be a real way to gauge what they're going to do this season. A lot of people say Chester will compete for a state championship, very high on them. They have lots of talent coming back, but I think Aiken has a lot of those guys that went through last year and are now coming back that also have experience as well, and they also have Jeremiah Green, so that doesn't hurt.
That, you know what, that never hurts. That guy's pretty fast, as you found out.
Yes, he is very fast. He is very fast. But going into this one, I think Aiken has a lot of things they want to see on both offense and defense, and with Corey Wallace maturing and stepping into a new role, they have a lot of guys back on the defense with Jeremiah Green, J.J. Corley, C.J. Hazel. All those guys are back as leaders, and one thing that Montgomery said was they've always known they've had the talent, and now they feel like they have that little extra discipline and all the other stuff to help them put the pieces together. But in this game, this is one of our games that we're going to kind of go more in-depth scouting. And by in-depth, I mean get some other people to help us out. So I had a chance to chat with Travis Jenkins, who works at the Chester News and Reporter. I said that right. I almost slipped up there.
There you go.
But I had a chance to talk with him about Chester, and he had some things to contribute and say about their team, and here's what he had to say. We're here with Travis Jenkins from the Chester News and Reporter, and he covers the Chester football team, and they have a big matchup with Aiken this week to open the season. And going into this one, obviously, Chester has some high hopes, and everyone around the state seems to know that. What have you seen from them in your coverage, and what do you think leads to those high hopes?
I think the fact that Chester's gone 9-3 the last two seasons is a big part of that, and did so with fairly young teams. They've got, I think, 17 starters back this year, all 5 starters back on the offensive line, a fairly loaded and experienced backfield, a lot of speed on defense, and a freshman quarterback in Zan Dunham, who Coach Victor Floyd thinks has the potential to be special. Not down the line, but now.
What can Aiken fans who may have not followed them as much, what can they expect from to see out there on the field?
Well, since Coach Floyd returned to lead the program in 2015, of course, this is actually his second tenure at Chester High. He left after taking them to the state title game in 2007 to go to Brunswick High in Georgia for several years, but he came back in 2015. He brought with him a very up-tempo spread offense. He's had really athletic quarterbacks who are a threat with their legs and their arms the last couple of years. John Irby had that role last year. He's now playing at the University of Rhode Island. And Malik Williams the year before that, who's now a wide receiver at Appalachian State. But their tempo, they've been fairly spread heavy. They try to balance the run and pass and speed. That's always been one of Chester's calling cards. They've got really athletic linebackers, and they have a fairly long history. Even if you go back to when Chester wasn't that good of turning out good defensive backs, and that's continued to hold.
What kind of is the atmosphere and the tradition surrounding the Chester football program?
I think like with a lot of programs, they've got their core fans who show up every week and are very boisterous and grill ribs in the parking lot and have a good time. I think, as with most teams, as this season starts to go the way that a lot of people, myself included, think that it can go, I think you're just going to see the bandwagon start to swell a little bit. Because this is, Chester's a town that's starved for a state championship. We've had 2 in girls basketball with Allison Feaster back in '93, and then Coach Zeke Washington, his team in 2004. Those are the only team state championships Chester High School has won since 1964. The Cyclones program has not brought home a state championship in a boys' sport, I think, since '63. The last time they won it in football. They've come close several times with Devin Downey in basketball. Back in the early 2000s with football in 07 and 08, they made it to the 3A state title game back-to-back years. So when you're talking about a fan base that's really, really hungry to see a title brought home, and they see some potential there this year. I mean, obviously we're a long way from that. We're not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but a lot of the pieces are in place for them to make a good run this year.
What matchup will you be covering this Friday night?
I haven't decided yet. If anytime I can get to Aiken and eat barbecue and watch football, that's usually a good night for me. But I'll either be at that one or Great Falls' game. And Louisville's actually playing on Thursday night this week, so I'll get the chance to go to games back to back this week. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Well, hopefully you get to see a good one. And once again, appreciate you calling in. And that was Travis Jenkins from the Chester News and Reporter. All right, we'd like to thank Travis for joining us and participating in this with us. Obviously, he may be down here to see the Aiken Chester game, or he may go watch Great Falls, as he just said. But either way, you can catch me on the sidelines at the South Aiken Greenwood game. Kyle will be going to cover the big matchup with North Augusta Thompson.
And I'll be leaving early. Gotta get there about 6:15 or so to get a spot.
Hopefully he can find parking. We'll have someone covering the Aiken Chester game as well. And obviously, we'll have roundups from all the area action in the newspaper and print, and we'll be back here again next week. And actually, next week we'll have some more stuff to talk about. We'll have game balls to hand out from this week. We'll also be announcing our first Chick-fil-A fan favorite player of the week.
That's a big one.
Fans get to vote this year for the fan favorite player of the week. We'll announce him here, and actually, the player of the week gets a week's worth of Chick-fil-A from Chick-fil-A. So
depending on who wins, they may have to very carefully define
I don't
what
know
a
how
week's
much
worth
a week's
means.
worth of Chick-fil-A is, but that is what I have heard will be happening. And you can check out the game of the week on AikenStandard.com, and maybe the fan favorite player of the week will come from there, or maybe elsewhere. But until next week, we'll see you guys out on the sidelines.